For all the PGurus audience, my namaste, namaskar, vanakkam. It's always a pleasure to talk to PGurus audience because they are very perceptive. Their comments are very useful. I thank Iyer for providing me this opportunity. And of course, Sharma, who is the Sachin Sharma, who is all in all technology, programming, subject, topic, discussion, everything. I thank him also. Even though he is behind the screen, he is actually the screen. Okay. Thank you very much. Today, this is an unannounced talk. Normally, every alternate Friday, I come at 8 p.m. Today is a Monday, not a Friday. And the coming Friday is also not my Friday. Anyhow, I want to highlight the huge tsunami which has taken place in Europe. Some of you may be following this, the European poll for the European Parliament, MEP, members of European Parliament. All the major countries like France, Germany, Spain, Italy, there is a huge sweep of the so-called quote-unquote extreme right, or what is projected in the TV channels. You see, when somebody is a right or conservative party which believes in against terrorism, which is for family values, which believes in the sovereignty of the nation, then it is termed as extreme right. This is what I call actually terminological terrorism, TT. You just push them as extreme. Like, in India, for instance, a nationalist party like BJP is pushed as extreme right. Actually, they are much more left than in terms of their policies than right. Anyhow, that's a separate issue. So, the surge of these parties in all these countries is something which I was forecasting. I was talking about it quite some time before itself. But anyhow, it has been given a shock to the ruling elite of all these countries. Macron has dissolved his assembly and called for election as a very definitive step, because the party of Le Pen has made considerable inroad in France, and it is one of the leading parties today in France, actually, even though it is considered as extreme right. It's not. These are all actually nationalist parties believing in the sovereignty of independent countries, and more importantly, they are against the terrorism, and they are also for re-looking at the military as well as financial aid given to Ukraine. So it's a major earthquake which has shaken the European countries. Let's be very clear about it. And the next annual polls which will come in individual countries would be providing very interesting details. Now, there are a couple of observations. Earlier, Holland actually had Geert Wilders. He is one of the so-called right extremist, but he is actually a conservative leader with strong views on this Islamic migration. You see, this migrant in all these countries have created havoc. You visit today any town in many of these countries as a tourist, you will be shocked actually. What you have read in the books and what you have read in the tourist brochure is totally different. As early as the 90s, when I was in Paris, around this Eiffel Tower, all the small businesses, roadside businesses, small shops were all run by Somalis, Ethiopians, and various other African nationals, and most of them are of Islamic belief. That time I am telling, in the late 90s. Now it has become such a massive thing. In many of the towns of Europe, you will find the people praying on the roads and other things. So Geert Wilders is very, very clear. He's totally is what you may loosely call anti-radical Islam. He even tells that if you don't believe in our culture and constitution, kindly go away. And he is the only leader in Europe who sent to our Sharma in India a congratulatory message when she had the problem with the television interview she gave. And because of that, there were some amount of consternation, and she is not in public life anymore, actually. And she's sort of pushed in the background. But he sent a congratulatory message to her and telling that your stand on the core principles of Islam are very correct, etc. So he has also sent yesterday a message about the terror attack in Kashmir by the Pak-sponsored agencies supporting India. Unfortunately, Indian political parties have not responded earlier also to his tweets, nor he is expected to form the government in alliance with other smaller parties. That was announced a couple of days before. The point is, the desperation, or what one can call the frustration of the right in Europe regarding this migration. It's not migration anymore. It is what is called invasion. Every day, 10,000 people are waiting outside to enter into Europe, either through boats. Many of these boats have sunk. You might have read in the newspaper. The number of people who died by sinking boats are much more than the number of people who died in the Second World War. There is a desperation among North Africans and various other conflict-ridden countries of the Middle East, whether it is Iraq, whether it is Lebanon, whether it is Afghanistan, even Pakistan. Many people are trying to enter, and reports suggest some of them are paying as high as something like 5,000 to 6,000 US dollars in order to get into these boats and then somehow enter. UK had got an absurd type of a scheme where in Rwanda they have created a huge amount of camp, and then they say whenever this boat illegal migrant, it is not called illegal migrant by the woke leftist, they call it as undocumented. And whenever they come, they will be sent to Rwanda. Finally, I think a large number of the white Britons will be settled in those camps, the way the British towns are getting crowded with the migrants. And very interestingly, in the year 2000, Germany brought in a suggestion about having large number of Indians into Germany. That time, some of you may recall, Y2K was a very major issue, and Indian computer specialists and others have played a very big role in the transition from last century to this century. That used to be called Y2K challenge in the computer system. And anyhow, the German then Chancellor wanted to bring on a 5-year contract with a green card a large number of migrants from India. But that time this Christian Democrat CDU had in Bavaria one of the partners, Joseph Strauss. He is some maverick, and he opposed it tooth and nail. Is Christian Democrat. You see, in Europe, you can have a name of a political party as Christian Democrat or Christian Socialist and other things. There is nothing wrong about it. Actually, they are very clever in all these things. They had a terrorist force of Catholics, but they always called them as Irish Republican Army. They never called it as Catholic terrorist force. Anyhow, if in India somebody has got a Hindu party, it will become a huge issue in the whole world. This Joseph Strauss, who belongs to Bavaria, who is a maverick, he opposed that tooth and nail, bringing Indians to Germany. He had a campaign conducted that the jobs of the kinder, the children of Germany, will be taken away by the Indian. And anyhow, that time the chancellor lost the poll, and this idea was shelved. And later, Merkel announced the opening up of the border for the what one can call these migrants, and under the scheme of multiculturalism, whatever it means, multiculti. That is, all these people will come and stay in Germany and get integrated. But by the time Merkel left a couple of years before, after something like a decade of being chancellor, she openly told multiculturalism doesn't work. See, multiculturalism can work before all cultures agree that they are all of equal standing and need for acceptance, not just tolerance. That is what India is. India is actually multicultural because it accepts other faiths and other things. But if a particular faith or a particular belief system doesn't accept others and it feels all other belief system are bunkum and their system alone is the truthful system, then very difficult for multiculturalism to thrive. Anyhow, so Merkel announced that the huge influx started into various countries in Europe because of the Schengen visa. If you enter one country, you can go to any other EU country also. It's an open system within the Europe. Provided you enter into Europe somewhere or other. So that is the, and this got a huge amount of flooding of those countries, and they were to provide social benefits to these illegal immigrants in the form of housing, in the form of health benefits, some places education even. It's a very, very tough type of thing. The local white population began to complain. You are asking us to tighten our belt and you are reducing our pension and other thing, but you are allowing all these people, and unfortunately, most of those migrants are not the Y2K Indian type of IT people. Most of the migrants are able-bodied, but without any. So they can do some what are called brown collar work, garbage removal, cleaning the street, and serving in the restaurant, and some of those type of activities only. And they were not properly fully integrated also. They were not learning the language. So there were a large amount of issues and problems. And this began in every town. Actually, this is a very major crisis in UK also. Bradford, for instance, has elected a mayor who is full-fledged Islamist radical, and who wants to have a discussion about Al-Aqsa Mosque and Hamas. And you see, the local mayor job is to take care of the drainage system, the electric bulbs on the streets, and the various other local issues. But somehow he is more interested. So many of the Malmö in Sweden, then your Brussels, your in France, many of the centers of activities, including their major port city, and in Belgium, adjacent to Brussels, there is a majority itself. In all these places, there is a huge amount of concentration of these migrants, which has its own tension, and some of them are called no-go area by the cops. They don't go there. It is expected to be sorted out by themselves, the locals themselves. Anyhow, all these are creating resentment among the Europeans. Already the European reproductive rate is relatively lower. Some countries have less than 1, and 2.1 is expected to be the equilibrium growth rate. 2 for a couple of 2.1 for any of the death or any misfortune which is arising for the kids. Anyhow, so most of them are having very low reproductive rate, and with the influx of migrants, they are worried that soon they will be overtaken. So that is the issue there, and that became a very major issue in the recent polls. Now we will come to Indian situation. Where does India stand? We feel that first and foremost, the political party like BJP or various organs of BJP or think tank or something, they should invite all these European so-called right-wing leaders to India, to Delhi, for a discussion on the major issues which is confronting them. They are all actually very favorably disposed to India, but we have never ever given our hand to them or any wishes or anything. We are very famous for that. We normally, bet on the wrong horse, and then after a couple of years we realize, oh gosh, another thing. So we are, very, very what one can call, unfortunately, positioned in terms of identifying who are our friends and who are not our friends. So we want to shake hand with Pakistan leaders of all the people, and we want to have good relationship with these Maldives fellows. Anyhow, so hopefully we should invite all of them for a discussion. What is their issue? Why are they steadfastly standing against the Islamic radicalism, and what type of lesson they can learn from us and we from them? I think this is a very important thing. In 1990s, Huntington wrote a thesis on Clash of Civilization. He was a US professor, and that time he mentioned that this capitalism, socialism are all gone. What is the major area of conflict is going to be civilization and culture. He identified various civilizations and other things, and how are they going to fight each other. And that is more or less becoming true with the. And still, many of the European leaders are stupidly thinking Russia is one of the major threat. Communism is a threat, and Russia is not a communist country as much as China is also not a communist country. Anyhow, many European leaders are living in the last century. Actually, they have not. Russia is facing as much terrorism. Recently, one of their music hall, there was a terror attack, and a large number of people, more than 100, were killed. Much earlier, there was in a school, there was a terror attack. So Russia is facing as much the problem of terrorism as Europe. Europe has got random, knifing of people and other things. Some school teacher in France was also eliminated, and this is becoming an extremely major issue and a major problem, right? So their attention looking at Russia as a major threat is the most idiotic thing which European leaders can do, right? So what they should be doing is they should consider Russia as a friend. Russia is as much European in terms of their culture, in terms of their activity, as many of the European countries are. The major problem will arise with China, which is embracing all these, Islamic terror groups. Even though within the country they are keeping Uyghurs and other thing in very terrible condition. That's a different issue. I think sooner Europe realizes that Russia is not a major power to oppose, but to align in order to face this civilizational conflict, better it would be. My own hunch is the recent attack in Kashmir may be one of the last ones. Out of frustration, if Europe decides, Europe can do the following thing: can switch off the funding activity for many of these terror groups, actually, and it can pounce on most of these terror groups. Obviously, Indian help will be asked. India may even be given a seat in UNSC in order to keep peace in Europe. But India should extract its pound of flesh. First and foremost, India should tell Europe to tell their church to stop funding activity in many of these northeastern states and among tribals and among some of these Dalit groups in south for conversion purposes. Some of their, not all, some of their right extreme churches involved in this, Nagaland, in Meghalaya, Manipur, many places. They are extremely active. So India should draw a red line and very clearly tell that this is not on. in order to facilitate any help. So Europe should be a partner to India in fighting this global menace. And in the process, India can achieve some of its own domestic goals in order to minimize the impact of terror in Jammu and Kashmir, etc. I think we have to wait and see how India is able to play this role, how India is able to get shake hand with some of the so-called right extreme European leaders and then carry on. And US is facing a very similar problem, but all the reports suggest chances of this Trump coming back is very high. And obviously, if he comes back, he is going to be totally with the so-called extreme right wing of the Europe. So let us wait and see how the situation develops. And we should also play our cards very, very properly and usefully. Thank you all. Thank you very much.